Hello, listeners. It's again another episode for a Goalimpact podcast. It's actually the fourth one. However, the third one was not published yet. So I refer to the fourth, despite the fact that maybe they will be published in a different order. Anyway, our guest today is again Jörg, and what we are going to discuss today is actually the World Cup and our analysis of the World Cup and our predictions. So, hello, Jörg. I'm very happy that you are here with me again.
Hi, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
So, maybe before we dive into the analysis, what was your general, or what is your general comment for the World Cup? I mean, it was, as we all know, politically quite a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed it briefly at the end of our last podcast. I have a very mixed feeling about the World Cup there, especially with the light of the migrant workers which lost their lives in building the whole thing. So that didn't go away during the World Cup, even though there were some nice matches that, of course, were there. But I never forgot what this is based on.
Yeah, I think that is important because also in our podcast with Manuel, right, who had who has a PhD in history and had this very interesting, so in the second Goalimpact podcast, who has this very interesting title, Selling the People's Game, which was quite matching. He said something like, football is very forgiving, right? So once the tournament and the emotions come up, you actually maybe forget what it's all grounded upon. And I think especially the final and with the turning Messi into a legend, let's say, right? This is the main narrative that remains. But I think at least it was more consistent. So the critical tone was more consistent than like 4 years ago, for example, right? So there is still some sports washing going on, and I think football will always be forgiving. That's just the nature of us and the game. But I agree, it was a very mixed and weird tournament, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it maybe also was less forgiving because it had a rather slow start. So I think there were not too many exciting games in the group stage. And of course, if there would be more exciting games, maybe it would be more forgiving because then people start talking about the games rather than the surroundings.
Exactly. So the games actually toned the entire discussion still into a very political one, right? Only I think after the half finals, the game came really into focus, right? And I think the final itself was, just from a game perspective, excellent. It was one of the best finals I can remember. The drama was great, the game was great, right? The entire climax. And I think, of course, it would be very bad if Messi would not have gotten his World Cup title, because even though we might also talk about that, even though Messi is maybe not the player with the highest goal impact, he is, of course, one of the best and most spectacular players, and so I think everybody was, in a sense, happy that he finally got that title.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a narrative which, of course, is fantastic, and also it has quite some tension in him trying many times throughout his career, and now with his final match finally achieving it. So this is like the beacon, the pinnacle of his career. That's fantastic, of course.
Yes, and I think if always he, let's say in 10 years or in 20 years, when people would compare him with the great legends, there would be always remaining this last line, yeah, but he never won a World Cup. And everybody saw that he was one of the greatest of our time, and so I think that is quite a good ending. Yeah. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about our predictions and analysis. So I think the two big elephants in the room, so just to speak them out loud, are Germany and Argentina. Germany for us was the team or the squad with the best individuals, and the difference was actually quite pronounced, which many people initially criticized, let's say. But how did you view Germany in that tournament?
Yeah, actually, I didn't see all of the German matches. So, for example, I only saw the first 60 minutes against Japan.
I
and
saw
I was
the last
quite
30, by the way. I saw the last
okay,
30,
okay.
so it was on me that they lost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I was actually quite surprised when I checked the game after my meeting I had at the same time was finished, that Germany lost, because they were completely dominating Japan until then, and it was rather surprising. They were only 1-0 in lead.
Yes.
Then they had the match against Spain, which for me was one of the best matches of the tournament. It was a really, really high quality football.
Yeah.
And a deserved 1-1. I mean, Germany maybe had slightly better chances, but it wasn't really so much of a difference that you would say they earned a victory.
Yeah.
And I think the Germany frustrated me a bit in the last match against Costa Rica. I mean, they did play very well, but after they scored the 1-0, they noticeably stepped down their counter press. So I think I would have expected them to go for a 8-0 win. I mean,
I
of
think
course
they tried. I think when you watch the post game interviews, they at least that was their approach, when I understood that correctly.
Yeah, but I think they just maybe they started it later, but in the moment when it was 1-0, they completely dominated Costa Rica, especially with their gegenpressing. So they won the ball right away after losing it, and basically Costa Rica didn't have any space to breathe or time to breathe, and they stopped doing that after 1-0. I mean, I even tweeted it before they conceded, because it was so obvious, big difference, and I think that cost them. I mean, there was no reason to step down. They didn't achieve anything with 1-0, because of course also Spain had its problem in offensive terms. So I was surprised that they didn't play better against Japan after they went 1-0 up. But I mean, obviously they didn't score too many goals apart from their very first match. Against well-organized defenses, they weren't very good.
But in general, which brings us to the point: how do you evaluate how good a team was in a certain game, right? And I think what in the last year has gained tremendous traction was the expected goals model, right? I mean, people use the expected goals of a game in order to justify if a win was deserved or not deserved or whatever. And in these considered from that perspective, I think Germany did pretty good. You said in the first game, I think until you watched really, was like 3 point something or almost 3-0. So Japan had almost no chances. And when I started watching, I think then Gündogan went off, right, and Goretzka came on, which was probably a weird tactical decision because Gündogan is a connecting player between offensive and defensive, and Goretzka has a different playing style. But when that switch was made, Japan scored their 2 goals basically, right? So if you consider expected goals from 0 to 60 minutes, Germany was like hyper dominant. and afterwards they conceded unluckily, but they still conceded 2 games. And I think in that game particular, it was very clear that the German defensive balance or offensive defensive balance is not that stable. It's quite volatile, right?
Yeah, exactly. This was also my thinking. Obviously, Germany had problems when they got pressed high because their defensive build-up wasn't stable enough. We also saw that in the Costa Rica game.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, not in the Spanish game. Maybe they had a higher concentration there. I don't know. Or
maybe motivation is different, right? Or in general, the entire team knows that is the psychological trick, right? That you know that the Spanish team is quite good, so everybody has to play on highest level, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. But it also made me think. I mean, obviously the problems of Germany were in the defense, and combining that with the fact that there was only a very short team build up before the tournament, I think Flick had to compromise on what to spend the training time on. And I have the impression he spent that mainly on the offensive coordination, because he probably thought we will have low lines to play against this with like deep opponents, and we have to crack those like situations where basically everyone is in the penalty area defending. And that's what they focused on, and that what they also really did very good, but that cost them on the defense, because the defense wasn't really good in the coordination. So as soon the gegenpressing didn't work, there was trouble.
Yes, and which brings us to the point that maybe goal difference, or probably goal difference, isn't that important as goal ratio. You once wrote, and I will post that in the show notes, an article why I think it's Heinke said that, right? That defensive teams win championships and offensive playing teams win games. And you once investigated this as well. And I think what was pretty clear that if you play relatively defensive, your probabilities of winning a game is higher, right?
Yes, exactly. So provided you are the better team.
Yes, of course.
So the point is, if you, I mean, just for the sake of the argument, assume both teams play incredibly offensive, and the expected score line is like 100 against 100. So the teams are equally good, but or maybe you are slightly better. So then it's you are one expecting to score 1 goal more. So it's 101 to 100. So, but you will still see from the big numbers that most likely winning chances are not very much different from 50-50. Just because, well, 100 is much bigger than 1. Now, if you play defensively and the expected goal sum is maybe only 2 goals, and you are having 1 goal ahead, that means the expected goal line is 1.5 to 0.5.
Exactly.
Then you have a goal superiority of a factor of 3 and a very high winning probability.
So it is fair to say that a high offensive playing style, and therefore a high number of goals in a game, invites randomness into a game, right?
Yes, exactly.
And so a smart strategy actually focuses more on if you are the better team, on that's important part, on a defensive
I guess in finance you would call that the Sharpe ratio. No? It's not about the your expected win or profit. It's about the relation between your profit and your volatility.
Yeah. So you that's a very good example, and brings back your financial background basically, which is why I like to talk to you about football as well, because you have always this risk perspective, right? which is lacking in the game, which is highly emotional, often highly emotional, right?
Yeah, but it's big part is risk management, and it's actually. I also pointed out that in the article, it's also the other way around. If you are the weaker team, if you're the weaker team, you want to play risky until you are in lead. Then maybe you will stop that, because then you suddenly are the expected winner, maybe, if you play defensively. So provided you're as good as in playing offensively as you are good in playing defensively, as a weaker team, you probably should be taking risks.
Which is, I think, counter to how many teams in leagues play, right? The weak teams often focuses on defense, and from a risk perspective, that is actually, let's call it, not smart.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, if this team is really only good, if it's only good in defense, and they really can't do like a possession game, or they're really not good in doing any offensive move, then probably playing defensively and striking a random counter is their best option. But if they can also play offensively, they should.
Yeah, and maybe one bias here is that in general, it's probably more easy to structure your team defensively, right? Because you don't have so many on-ball actions, whether you have you want to make spaces more tight, so it's more like off-ball movement, which is probably easier to train also than doing offensive impact, which maybe explains why so many teams focuses on that as well. However, again, under the conditions, both would be similarly strong. One team would be similarly strong offensively and defensively. One should more focus on the offensive impact, right? But this in general, this brings us back. So we had like, I think, 182 goal impact for the top 15 German players. That obviously isn't the starting squad, right? But it brings back the question of what is actually a good team. And so here I play a little bit of devil's advocate. And many people said when we posted in the article the ideal formation with these players, that team would never play, basically, right? So what one has to always consider is how these individuals are then aligned into a team. And for Germany, I think it's fair to say that that some positions and some players aren't perfectly matched, right? So
I mean, from a tactical perspective, I think Germany has some weaknesses on the left back and right back position. So we don't really have good wide defenders. I mean, the last good that I can remember was Philipp Lahm, and he stopped playing quite some time ago. So definitely there's a lack, but I think a good coach, given time to train, should be able to overcome that. And it's not, they are not, the players we have are not that bad that you should say it's justified that we go out on the group stage without being unlucky at the same time. So I think they had definitely a very, very decent, if not very good team even. They were unlucky, and maybe they were also not entering the tournament with as well trained team, in the sense that I mean, Flick was changing defensive formation even prior to the tournament quite often, trying to find something which works, and I think he just couldn't find something in time, and maybe it costs Germany as well that we didn't really have a back 4 or 5 which played enough together.
I think this is reasonable. And also one more question, and maybe how you view that. I think there is another saying in football is 11 Freunde müsst ihr sein, 11 friends. You should be 11 friends. And what in the aftermatch of the entire World Cup, or when Germany went out, there was this discussion with the protest action. And what I heard is, or I don't know if it's true, right? It's rumors, so we never know if that's the full story. Probably not. But what was the case, that only 2 or 3 players were for a protest action and all the others were actually against. So for me, from a psychological perspective, maybe it showed that there isn't this team spirit, 11 friends or 11 Freunde. So do you have anything? Do you have an opinion about that?
No, I have absolutely no idea what was the discussions about this protest action. So no, I have no idea. But of course, it's true that a well-functioning team is one which has an open discussion culture and is full of respect of each other's ideas. And
yeah,
should it be true that like some players forced something upon other players that they didn't really want, that wouldn't be helpful for a team dynamic. But yeah, at least in my observation, I didn't perceive anything which let me feel like this is a non-functioning team. I think it was good.
I agree on that, but more general comment. I sometimes think when you have like a team, you have to have a united narrative, right? And if you don't have it, maybe there will be some dysfunctional parts which will trigger down even into the game. That said, I don't have a clear opinion if that was the case for Germany, because when I watched the game, I didn't see a dysfunctional team or something like that, right? So I agree on that. But I found that interesting. I found that interesting. So we are now in the speculation.
Yeah.
Of
But
why.
I think from a management perspective, this is interesting because, I mean, of course, such a protest action, if it is really wanted by the team and not only by individuals, could be something which bonds together and makes it a stronger team. It could be also the opposite if it is not like a functioning team. It could also lead to separation.
Yes, and if it's true, I don't say it's true. I think if it's true, then I also found that it's quite paradoxical, because the action was aiming at a dictatorship, right, and totalitarian regimes. However, it was against the spirit of democracy as well, if it would be true. So I found that weird. But again, I do not claim that that I know if it's true, because of course media always has interest to generate clicks, and so there is an interest conflict in portraying the full truth, let's say, right?
Yeah, I mean, probably they also have some troubles to find news if everybody goes to vacation that early.
Yeah, maybe. But Flick, I think I think 2-3 days ago, I read an interview, said something like, maybe we focus too much on politics. Something like that was the part. So one could see that Germany, the team, didn't make their mind entirely up on that specific case, right?
My general bottom line was spending time. If you have that little time and spending it on anything else, then preparation is probably not a good thing in itself, unless it really leads to bonding.
Good point. Yeah, very good point. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that is a very good point. Yeah. Anyway, this brings us basically to the second elephant, let's call it, and I think the team we had the most differences to bookies and bookies and also to the ELO ratings was Argentina, the winner, of course. And so how did you view them? I guess you didn't see all the games, but what was your opinion there?
Yeah, I think they have a really good functioning team. So I also think their tactical approach was very well suited for the players that they have. So I think it's a great job by the coach. I also noticed that Messi had a very good performance, and I'm not talking about his genius passes that he did, where you even wonder how he could see that there's a player, let alone making that pass. I'm talking about especially his defensive contribution, which wasn't there in the past all the time. And I think this helped the team a lot, that they didn't have to defend with 10 players, but they defended with 11.
Yeah, I think especially the defensive performance was like amazing. Just in the final, we just talked about that briefly, was that I think France had one shot before the penalty came, which wasn't a very good shot. That's for sure as well. So they defended the probably best offensive team extremely well in the final, right? So this was particularly good. But when you have a look at the goal impacts of the defensive players, I think Otamendi is quite strong. However, most of the other players don't have such a high goal impact. So why is it that when we bring new individuals or individuals with maybe a relatively low goal impact into a new team, because the goal impact is mainly derived from the clubs, right? When we bring them into the national team, why could there be problems with arguing based from the goal impacts derived from the team performance, or club performance, sorry?
I mean, you have. I mean, I'm struggling because you said that bring players in a new team. So I think part of the success from Argentina was it's not a new team. They played like this before. So unlike Germany, for example, where you could argue it was basically, at least on the defensive side, a new team.
Yes, but, that's true. Yeah.
But of course, Goalimpact measures the basically past performance of a player, and especially if a player is used tactically in a different way than they used to play in the past, they may also have a different performance. I mean, if you are talking about Argentina, let's talk about Messi. So Messi probably can play on a lot of positions. On field, probably everywhere, maybe better in the attack than in the defense. As a center back, he maybe wouldn't be the very first option, but he definitely would be terrible as a goalkeeper. So depending where the coach places Messi, his performance will be different, and that will be picked up by the goal impact. So, which means if you have a player with a really high goal impact, it's basically proven that they can play on a very high level. But if you have a player with a low goal impact, it may be that he was used suboptimally in the past, and he could be better. But if you buy a player with a low goal impact, you should have a good reason why you would believe that you will play him better than he played in the past.
Yeah. Which, if I could translate it, which would be like something like there is something like a condition and an environment dependent goal impact, right? And if a good coach now actually sees what kind of playing style would fit my playing material, and therefore could actually transcend maybe if a player's goal impact when he was forced to play in a tactical formation which wasn't made for him, right? So one could say that the Argentinian coach is probably very good in bringing in these individuals into a system that focuses on the strength of the defensive players, and therefore is better than when these players are playing maybe in an extremely offensive, high gegenpressing style, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also hides the weaknesses, obviously, very well, because otherwise they would concede.
Yes, and when one has that, when one takes that into account, I think ELO rating is slightly better in evaluating the team strength than our goal impact rating. Would you, or I'm in shaky territory now, but or let me rephrase it. So now we have this goal impact rating. We've posted our, but you've seen the ELO ratings based, I think, from Joshua Bull from which university was, I don't remember, Oxford. I think it was Oxford. I think he predicted Argentina to be the World Cup. I mean, sample size put aside, but how do you compare? And this is actually funny because I mean your first model was ELO based, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say all models are wrong, some are useful.
Yes,
also
exactly.
holds here.
Yeah.
So if ELO is better or worse than Goalimpact in predicting team strengths depends heavily on the context it's being used. So if you have a team which has a consistent player base, not changing too much over time,
Yeah.
then in principle, ELO should be bias free, and you should have a decent prediction of the strengths.
Yeah.
If you have a team which is newly formed, I mean, think about, I don't know, a newly promoted team where basically half the team leaves the club and new players enter, then ELO won't tell you anything about it. I mean, it's just a different story than what you measured in the past.
Yeah, and here now, when considering Argentina played for quite a long time with that coach and in that quite a similar squad, one could actually assume that ELO has good predictive power, right?
Yeah, it has a good predictive power. In general, it has. No? I mean,
yes.
The reason why I moved away from ELO, my God, I'm getting old, it's like 10 years ago, was that especially when I used it for betting, I realized that it's just bad at the beginning of each season.
Yes, which is exactly your point, right? Because in the beginning of the season, new transfers, new coach, new entire team. So you cannot basically from an ELO rating for last season, you cannot derive the real strength of the team for this season, right? However, if you do that with players, you have you can immediately reflect the new strength of a team, right, based on the players past.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you're talking about national teams now, you also have the problem that you only have so many observations with ELO. No? There are not so many national games. So there's a high likelihood that you actually measuring a team which changes constantly.
Yes, true. However, yes, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so I think in principle, if in principle, in many occasions, I would say, especially for national teams, a player-based rating system we're working on is picking up things better.
Yeah, yeah. One more point I would like to say something about is the home advantage. So, I mean, we know where the World Cup was, and we don't have to discuss this special team because out of many reasons we already talked about that. But when we have a look at the supporters distribution within the games, there were a lot of Brazilian and Argentinian fans within the games, right? So we might actually have a hidden home advantage factor.
Possible. I mean,
hard to say
yeah,
how
it's
strong
really
it
hard to
was.
say, because I didn't really get to the bottom of what makes a home field advantage yet. Is it like the players knowing the surroundings? Is it then the number of own fans in the stadium wouldn't really help so much? Or is it?
I've read once. Sorry to interrupt. I think I've read once that the biochemical marker is testosterone. So to what that translates in the environment is again another debate, right? What you are just talking about. I think biochemically it's testosterone, which I found quite interesting. And but sorry to interrupt. It's hard to say what factors actually.
Exactly. I did investigate if you have a higher home field advantage if there are more fans in the stadium, and I couldn't pick up a signal there. So that doesn't seem to be the case.
But when they're in Corona time, I mean, Corona was an interesting sample size when the stadiums were empty. I think the home advantage really dropped, if I remember correctly. I don't have numbers right now, but okay.
I did the investigation before Corona times.
Yes.
So this is then the difference between like 10,000 or 50,000 people in the stadium. There weren't so many zeros. So maybe it's worthwhile to repeat it now that we have this sample on the Corona time.
Maybe there's a critical limit, right?
Yeah. However, and that said, the home field advantage, even prior to Corona, is going down since years.
Yeah.
And my expectation would be that the video referee makes it go down even further, because I mean, if there would be a bias from the referee influence, being influenced by the exactly, then that might be a bit mitigated by the video assistance. And
that's a good point. Yeah.
But we are seeing it going down since years. I mean, so that's why actually Goalimpact measured its over time. So it's not a constant since a century. It's like explicitly modeled to go down.
Yeah, interesting if it will be ever completely equal. But, I mean, if you can find out the reasons why, and maybe, I don't know, it's speculation, but the more knowledge you gather for the reasons why, the more power you have to make it more equal. But from a supporter perspective, I think it's actually quite nice to have something like a home field advantage, right? Okay. Any more comment about Argentina, or think we tackled the issues more or less?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we are done. It's a great team. I think also deserved winner.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's maybe good to say. All right. However, we can defend, or you did that already in the tweets sometimes, the predictions. And one case was basically the expectation value, right, for the top 16 teams, for example, to progress the group stage. I think it was it 10.5 was the expectation value, and fundamentally 11 teams went on, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is what many people don't really understand about probabilities, is that if we predict France to be the second best winner, or Germany to win the World Cup with a percentage of 25%, or I don't really remember what was it pre-tournament, maybe 22, then that means there is 75% chance of it not happening. So you can't judge how well a prediction is just by the model picking the right winner. So what you have to look at is your expected number of, for example, round 16 teams from your top 16, and the actual number. Now, what would you expect from pre-tournament from your top 16 teams, how much would reach the round of last 16? And the pre-tournament expectation was, as you said, I think 10.5 or 11.5 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And the actual outcome was more or less the same.
Yeah.
So from the model perspective, we always expected some surprises. But the whole point about the surprise is you don't know which one of them will happen.
Yeah.
So Germany definitely was the biggest surprise, but it was not out of order.
It was 12. We even gave 12% for that. But however, some people argued, they also went down 4 years ago, right? So there must be something wrong. And even 6 games, I mean 2 times group stage phase, is extremely low sample size, right? And therefore you have to take the entire tournament into account, which is why leagues are easier to predict than or no, not easier to predict is the wrong terminology, but the rankings of clubs in a league are easier to predict than in a World Cup, right?
Yeah, exactly. You will have a higher overall percentage chance to pick the winner of a league. You know? I mean, if you want to predict Bundesliga or let's make Ligue 1, you will not be surprised that there is the like a 80-90% chance that it will be Paris Saint-Germain. So you can't get this high numbers for a cup. That's impossible.
Yeah, there are fatal cases in a cup, so it's completely different tournament style, right? Therefore, it's different to predict. So I think that is actually the only way also to really judge how good our prediction was, right? To take the entire all teams into account, and then look at the expectations we had initially, and then see if that actually matched. And therefore, the other teams which were claimed to be a surprise, like Denmark, Belgium, and Morocco, maybe the positive case, are included, right? The surprises are included in the statistics.
Of course, I mean, of course. If you in statistics, if you have a like prediction model, you have something like forecasting power, and you have two versions of forecasting power. One is the implicit forecasting power, which is how well does your model claim to predict things, and then you have the actual forecasting power. So how well is it actually predicting things? And it is very easy to generate a model which has a very high implicit forecasting power. No? I mean, and if you go for betting rounds in that of non-repeated instances, like you make it a tip round with your team, and you want to have win this one instance, but you're not doing it like over and over again, then probably you should tweak your model to have slightly higher implicit forecasting power than explicit forecasting power, because in the likely case that the likely thing happens, you are the ones who predicted it slightly more and hence win. But if you want to have a actually good prediction, then your implicit and forecasting power should never exceed the explicit one, because you're just making the predictions worse. So that's why I'm looking at those percentage numbers, and for me it would be a bad sign if it's either too much off in either direction, because if we predicted far less than what was there, then maybe our implicit prediction power isn't high enough. We should actually be more aggressive in our predictions, which is easily done. Or we are really missing some really important factors or something like this. But I think the more worrying case is if the implicit prediction power is too high, because then basically we claim things which aren't true.
Yeah. Interesting detour to statistics. I think I still need some teaching from you. Anyway, did you have already time or did it came cross your mind to compare the predictive power for Goalimpact and ELO? Since we also talked about that already, so it didn't cross your mind yet, but earlier on, so in the past, you did that obviously because you switched the models, right?
Yes. So I mean, ELO is a branch of models. It's not only one. I mean, I guess the original ELO definition from chess, I would assume that most people don't really apply this one. But no, I didn't do that. I mean, of course, when I made the decision to switch, I compared both with the betting markets, but that's slightly different flavor to it, because if you want to build the best prediction model, that might not help you on the betting markets unless it's better than the prediction of the market itself, which is a very, very tough thing to do. If you want to be successful on the betting markets, you need to predict a aspect of the outcome which the betting markets do not pick up, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to predict the whole thing better than the betting markets.
I see. I see. All right. Okay.
So maybe you could build a model. Are the quotes off on rainy days, and then you only bet on rainy days. So if you find something which the betting markets don't pick up, you don't need to know.
You have to find your edge, basically.
Exactly,
right?
and my edge was the players which are in the starting 11.
Yeah, I see. All right. I think we covered pretty much everything, except you think there should be, you want to add something. I want to add just one more thing. We also predicted the European Championship for women in the last summer, and that went extremely well, right? So I just want to point that out, that if you are fair, you have to take also other predictions from our side into account. But I think that was good because some people, especially in our extremely hyper-paced time, are very quick with criticism, but don't take the entire story into account. I mean, these people won't probably listen to a podcast 1 hour about stats and the models, but I think it's still good to put that into context, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also 2014 wasn't such a bad prediction. I think we had Germany on rank 2 after Brazil.
Because of the home field advantage, I think, in 2014.
Brazil, exactly.
Which is funny because 2024, the European Championship will be in Germany. If I'm, it's a shame that I don't know it, but I think it's in Germany, right? Should be in 2 years. You don't know?
No, I don't know.
I think we both don't know. That's I think it's Germany, and we probably will have Germany still very good. There have to be some adjustments to the squad, which we talked initially about, right? About some positions, but I suspect that we still will have Germany very high in that rating. So maybe we are a bit more lucky.
Yeah, and the German team there were quite a few nice young players, and so Julian Brandt, Kai Havertz, Mukoko. I mean, they have something in the pipeline which is really, really good.
Yes, although I was shocked that regarding goalkeepers, I mean, I highly suspect, because we just published the aging curve article, Neuer can still easily play. However, the German goalkeepers are all relatively old, and I haven't seen that many young goalkeepers coming up. So I was a bit shocked about that, but I suspect there will come up a new talent soon, because Germany had never really troubles with goalkeepers. So I guess there will be someone.
Yeah, I didn't look, but interesting. I will have a look afterwards.
Yeah, I at least from the usual suspects, right? I took the from the most popular goalkeepers, which is funny because many people now say Neuer's career is completely over because he broke his leg. I mean, who knows? However, he would still be able to play at least 4 or 5 years on that level. I really don't see a reason why that shouldn't be possible.
Yeah, exactly. And we still have Ter Stegen.
Yes, a couple of years younger, right? All right, Jörg, I think again it was a great pleasure. It's the end of the year, so I wish you already Merry Christmas. I'm curious what the new year will actually bring. I mean, there are some interesting things happening around Goalimpact. The new homepage will come out very soon, so people might check that out. And yeah, I'm very I'm looking forward for our next episode. And thank you for your time as always.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for having me, and also Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.